Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the 7th part of What If Deku Didn't Believe All Might and Remained Quirkless. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 13, Chekhov's gun, but it's really them doing Izuku's makeup to give him eye bags. You all remember that scene, right? Good. Izuku slammed into the support department with Eureka in tow. We need a jetpack as soon as you can get one. This girl here needs to fly. He yelled into the darkness of the 1F. It was lunchtime, so they could have all vanished into the cafeteria. He believed in the reputation they had gained. There was always a Mad Hatter in the support course. If the rumors had anything to say, Izuku should have found the place. He ventured into the mess of mechanical parts and shone his phone torch. Eureka had stuck by the entrance. She hadn't heard of the demon in the class and was waiting for him to leave and come back. Otherwise she had heard of the devil herself and had a sense of self-preservation to stick by the door. She did look like the devil when he finally spotted her. The lamp she was working at was the only light in the room. It made her bright pink hair look red and her skin melted into the shadows other than her outline. She was glancing at the blueprints but hardly moving to work off it or edit it. "Hello?" he asked. Izuku prodded her shoulder. "Do you want us to leave?" The light to the whole support department lit up with a flick of the girl's wrist. There was no flickering, the change was instant. She pulled herself up from the chair she had been sitting on and stretching. "Are you here for my babies?" she exclaimed, getting closer to Izuku. "Oh, you must be, after all, isn't that a hero student at the door? Come in. I have the perfect babies for you." She backed away to wave Eureka over, but the girl seemed content to stick by the door. Midoriya gestured for her to come in, even though his friend really didn't have a matter in it. The inventor was already in her personal space before Eureka could protest. "Babies?" Eureka stammered as she was dragged over to the nearest workbench. "The product of Hatsum Industries. My babies. Come on, I must have one for you somewhere." "Stay there, I'll have something fitted in just a minute. Now where did I put it?" She delved into the mess of her babies. To the two in the room it all looked like gunk. Izuku could faintly make out what some of them were. "Hatsum. We're looking for something to help Eureka fly. We have some notes. We really wouldn't want you to." He trailed off when she threw her face off with charcoal smeared down her face. From the pile the whims of smoke could just be made out if you knew where to look. "Pass me a fire extinguisher, could you?" she said, gesturing over to the tool tucked away in the empty corner of the room. Then, she dived headfirst back in to continue searching for the tool. Izuku nodded, not daring to question what she was doing. He grabbed the fire extinguisher and sprayed it onto the pile. He chucked it back down by him, with a clatter, and waited for her to come back to the surface. Hatsum wasn't rising for air anytime soon until she yelled. "I found it! Your friend had an anti-gravity quirk, right? Oh, this will be so much fun. Try this one." She yanked out a pair of boots and tapped them. "These are my rocket babies. I can't wait for you to try the beta. I'm still trying to get them to be less clunky, but don't worry, I can use them fine so they can hold their own weight and more. They're exactly what you need, now try them on." She pushed them into Eureka's hands and bounced on her feet. She watched the hero student slip her shoes into the metal. "Do these work?" You're only a first year and I really don't want to see recovery, girl. You should just try them. You'll have to soon." See, he gets it? Anyways. Failure is just one road for success, and I need to try these on someone who doesn't know how to use them. All you need to remember is that these babies were made by Hatsum, so you will be fine. Now get out into the training center and show them off. With a slap onto the metal she walked off to the clean section of the department. Eureka stumbled over until she hit the section. "Try using your quirk," Izuku called as she dragged her feet around the center. From beside him Mei whispered. "That is kind of the point. Your friend is awfully thick, isn't she?" "You shouldn't say that. It's true. My babies are meant to be used with the quirk unless she somehow signals the rocket boot version. Even I don't know how to do that again, so she's only going to be slowed down if she doesn't do anything soon. Give her some time to figure it out. She's taking so long. Let me slap some common sense into her. Really, this is painful to watch. Do you reckon she even knows how to make herself float?" "She should do. We've discussed it. Mei pouted as she watched Eureka dance around the room some more. There was no sign that she was close to figuring out what had to be done. Hatsum was bouncing on her feet, most likely dying to go and help her get started. They all remained where they were. I don't know how to do this. Okako said after a while of her standing still. I don't even know why we came here in the first place. It's really cool, but how are these meant to be help me? You aren't using them, right? They really aren't that hard to use. I used them before when they were jetpacks. Just use your quirk and they'll work fine. Try touching yourself with your quirk activated. It should be possible. She gave a determined nod and tapped herself. Nothing happened and Mei slumped further than she already had. Under her breath she was fixing everything his friend couldn't know she was doing wrong. If she refused to speak them out of spite. Izuku wanted to slap her because no one should talk about his friends like that. She still had time to grow as a person. This is her first time doing it. Izuku reiterated in case Mei had ignored him the first time. She shrugged, I guess, but she's hardly trying. As if she's afraid of failure. That's the only way she's ever going to get better, so she needs to suck that fear up her ass. It's only going to drag her down, and who cares if she implodes them all in the process. Majima-sensei has a ton of material and all the blueprints are saved on my hard drive. We'll be fine, there isn't anything on the line. It took a lot of pacing, Mei yelling, and ideas, but Eureka made herself float with 10 minutes left of the lunch. She was mid-air lying on her back as she tried to get the boots to work. Her head was dangerously close to the ceiling as she rose after one of her steps had sent her floating. Guys, I need a safety mat. She screamed as she flipped over to land on her back. Mei jumped up at the concept of finally having something to do. I'll grab the one that's left around somewhere around here. Come help me find it, because otherwise what's her name is going to fall and I do not need that on my resume. Izuku trailed after her. He grabbed the mat she was talking about and pulled it over to where Eureka bounced like a ping pong ball. Is it safe to release? Eureka screeched, although if she did do nothing, that defeated the purpose of even coming to the support department to begin with. They could have done this in a padded room where it would be safe. May have a thumbs up. You should also try and turn them on or use them. They'll be dirty now and cleaning them is a pain. At least make it worth it. They aren't on. Well, of course not. They would have had a higher risk of blowing up otherwise. Don't tell me you didn't even bother to check. I can come and fix them if you want. You really deserve a chance with my baby. Mei exclaimed as if it had been the most obvious thing in the world. She marched up to meddle with the device. Izuku tried to stop her. He really did, but some people refused to listen. Mei had taken out a screwdriver and was fiddling with the boots. She shouted over Eureka's screams. Her face had gone green, but releasing herself now would risk crushing Hatsum. Her hate didn't stretch that far. Hatsum, I think she's going to puke, please move. Izuku screeched. His caution was well warranted, seeing as moments later puke started to splutter out of her mouth. It went onto the safety mat. Mei looked down at where it had landed and backed off. It allowed Eureka to press her fingertips together. She released her own weight. She landed face first on the floor with a thud. She lifted her head to look at them before everything she had been holding in spurted out. The two watched as her guts spilled around her. I should probably get her to recovery, girl. She's overused her quirk more than expected. I'll help you clean up if I'm allowed in a minute, is that okay with you? I really want to help, but I don't think Eureka can get there herself. It'll be like a support. Let me take my babies, then you guys can go. Also, come back tomorrow. Not with her, of course. She's no fun, but you could help me lots. I need a runner boy. Mei unhooked the first boot from Eureka's limp body. I'll have to pass. I have another friend and we agreed on meeting tomorrow. He's training right now. Izuku excused as he offered Eureka to lean against his side. After school? Mei asked. I have a bus and after school activities. I can do the same time next week if that's useful for you. That sounds lovely. I look forward to seeing you there. Mei shook his hand several times before finally letting them leave the classroom. You went to meet the support demon? Shinsu asked the next day. I think demon is a bit of an overstatement. Hatsum's just enthusiastic. Midoriya argued as he swung on the swing. Shinsu raised an eyebrow and Eureka shook her head. Enthusiastic doesn't exactly cover it. The devil herself also seems overdramatic though, seeing as she wasn't that bad. Not really, she wasn't malicious. closer to oblivious to how to react with people who aren't as insane as her. She sat on the floor with her legs crossed over. Each time Izuku swung up he got dangerously close to kicking her in the face. He went up again closer than the times he had been before. Also, please stop swinging so high. You're going to kick me. She squeaked. I don't know how. He said, can't you just back off or get Shinsu to stop me? They both sent pitying looks to the purplenet who stood by the structure of the strings. He sighed and walked behind where Izuku was flying and grabbed the chains. Their joint weight dragged the swing back to the ground, causing Izuku to barely move. Don't push off again, Shinsu ordered. Izuku grinned and walked backwards until he was on his tiptoes and barely sitting. The two watched him in fear as he prepared to jump and swing again. Shinsu had gone back to gripping the chains as if his life depended on it. If the green-haired monster did jump he wouldn't go anywhere. He grumbled under his breath. He wasn't going to kick Eureka. The height he would gain at first wasn't enough to send any harm to anyone nearby. It was better to be safe than sorry, he guessed. It didn't make it any more boring. If we're not going to do anything, why don't we just head to Eureka's house and do those fake eye bags we joked about? We came here to use the equipment, not talk while I'm held back on a swing. He complained. I am the size of the slide. What can we do? What's the spinny thing called? We should totally go on that, Eureka suggested. She pointed towards the roundabout with a grin. Last one there has to push us, Midoriya screeched as he hopped over to where it was. He already had a lead in comparison to Shinsu and Eureka, who had to run round the equipment and stand up. Izuku had pulled himself onto the roundabout first. He was followed closely by Eureka, who slid into the hexagonal seat beside him. Shinsu was seconds behind her but walking. He had given up the second she entered the red ring and he was still a few. That was unfair. Shinsu puffed as he grabbed the metal bars. It was though, seeing as Eureka had to get up and I'm the only one here who doesn't run daily as their pre-sports festival. He stuck out his tongue, so spin us, Shinsu. It's only fair. I didn't even agree on the race, Shinsu argued. It was 2 against 1, but because Izuku and Eureka were content to do nothing. Eureka knelt round so she faced towards the safety railing. Neither did I, but I'm not complaining. Yeah, because you won. Shut up and spin us, Shinsu grumbled but took off running with his hands gripped on the pole. He was shockingly strong for someone who had never done fitness before 2 weeks ago. The roundabout was made to be easy to push for 5-year-olds, done by an adult. Not 2 teenagers being dragged by their fellow teenager. They turned around slowly but gradually picked up pace. Once the world was spinning round and round, 2 feet clanked on the metal as Shinsu hopped on. Eureka flipped around so she could face them both instead, the outside. How long will this go for? She asked. It depends on the friction that the metal plate has. Considering how easy it was for us to get going, I'm going to make a guess that there's not a lot. The 3 of us have to be giving it more weight than before, meaning spinning round has to do more work. We're missing too many variables to come to a conclusion of how long it will take before I have the guts to jump off it. I would guess we'll be here for another 10 minutes. That's a long time, Izuku. I mean, we were already running out of things to talk about and now we have 10 minutes where we can only talk, Eureka stated. Isn't that what we do every lunchtime? Normally we eat food or throw at each other, or I rant about our lessons. Not sit on a roundabout while Izuku does physics for the fun of it. My fosters don't even expect me home for another 2 hours and we're only stuck here for 10 minutes. Shinsu complained as he leaned on the railings. His head hung past it, letting his purple hair flop by the ground. We could always bunk Eurekakas and do each other's makeup or discuss quirks or work on a collaborated post. Ditch all that, we could go to a cat cafe to try and talk for another 5 hours, Izuku suggested. I don't have enough money for a cat cafe, Eureka said. I have cheese at my house and some cats nearby. Sounds like a great idea. Why pay when we can make our own for free? Guys, that's illegal. Those cars probably have owners you're ripping them away from for our own pleasure. We can just have some cheese sandwiches at Eureka's, Izuku argued. That's no fun, Shinsu moaned, but he didn't argue back. The law sure is boring. Being a villain doesn't seem like that bad of an idea actually. All the cats I could ever have sounds like better deal than being a hero and having to pay to get a cat. Imagine, the professional villain. Catnapper. If that isn't your hero name, I will kick your ass into space, Eureka screeched. Shinsu went to laugh only for it to be muffled by Izuku's hand. Don't laugh. She can actually do that and they'd never find the body to prove it was her. You have to make it your hero name now. You wouldn't actually do that though, would she? Shinsu asked, looking at Yurarika for her answer. She started at him with a poker face. There was no hint of her joking as she. I could destroy you and face no repercussions, as Izuku just pointed out. I would be a fool to not take the opportunity that presented itself to me. So, Shinsu, what's your hero name going to be? She teased. Catnapped. He drawled. Yurarika clapped. You got it? She grinned before she laughed. Izuku snorted into his hands as well. Shinsu glared at the two but didn't try and hide his smile. He laughed. I thought you were serious for a second and I was like, whoa, nope, not today, Satan. Satan should be upset you denied access to hell. Oh no, we can't deny access to where we already live. That's just called moving to another country, which I'm sure is just another circle of hell. The only true escape is to jump in front of Endeavor and hope you burn past this life. Yurarika whezed, God, can we even see that man amidst the flames of hell? Yes. Shinsu said. The two looked at him for an answer he willingly gave. No one radiates small dick energy like he does. The roundabout brought to a stop before anyone could respond. Izuku intently hopped off it and was closely followed by his friends. He pushed open the park gate and let them go in front. Mainly because he had no clue where Yurarika lived and didn't want to make a wrong turn at any point and be laughed at. Yurarika thankfully understood she would have to take the lead. She hopped into the lead and wandered round the local area. They walked in silence for the most part, as any conversation had been burned out back at the park. She drew up to an apartment block. It was one of the several ones in Mufasta, seeing as housing couldn't fit all the residents. It had the same brick and balcony layout Izuku's own. That made him feel as if he was leading his friends to his house instead. Yurarika pushed the door open and walked up the stairs. I live on the second floor, so taking the lift seemed kind of pointless when it takes just as long to get up the stairs. Also, free exercise, which is a bonus. You don't have to brag, living on the 5th floor has its perks. Izuku said as she pulled out her keys and opened the door to the takeout clustered apartment. Her face had gone flushed when the boys spotted the room. I didn't have time to clean it up before we left. I'm sorry it's such a mess. Shinsu picked up one of the empty cups and twisted it round to see the name. You like maize hoku then? She nodded. I already found it quite bland, like most foods made for foreigners, but each to their own. At least it isn't McDonald's. He expanded. Shinsu chucked the cup at the bin where it fell in with precision. Anyone would think was an episode of Home Makeovers. Izuku joked as he collapsed on the nearest seat after pushing the cushion out of the way. I mean, who goes round your friend's house and cleans it up? Shinsu, go sit down. I'll grab the makeup kit and clean up as we need it to be clean. You're my friend, I can manage this. Yurarika said as she grabbed the makeup brush closest to her. Shinsu still stayed where he was. She looked round to him but he hadn't moved yet. He swallowed a lump in his throat. I won't be able to focus, and if we all clean together, it'll be done in 3 minutes minimum. He had picked up another takeaway cup and lobbed it back into the bin. Izuku pulled himself up from the sofa. I'm willing to help if it helps Shinsu chill. The purplenet smiled at that and Yurarika gave in. She grabbed the dirty sock nearest to her and lobbed it into her bin. Well, are we going to get cleaning or what? She asked, grinning at the other two. It's been needing to be done for a while now. Cleaning took less time than Izuku expected. Shinsu was efficient at finding anything and getting it in the bin. He showed no hesitance as he pulled up the slimy green noodles from the ground and wandered to the food bin. They would have been stuck without him. Now, they had settled on the sofa with the makeup kit in hand. The palette had been made for parties, considering the dark blues and blacks. It was filled with did not match Yurarika's color scheme. She wouldn't have brought it for everyday outings without looking like a mad lad. Right. Izuku said as he shut his eyes, trusting his two friends to not murder him while he couldn't see. If I open them I have to go to hospital and none of us have the money or time to do that. That's about it. She's closing in now. Shinsu warned before the feathery brush dusted his cheeks. The powder stuck to his face, making it feel as if mud had been smeared down his cheek. It tickled, like a feather, as Yurarika continued to paint on him. She sniffled a giggle at the result when she pulled away. You look ridiculous. She warned, which was not a good sign. Izuku braced himself, tensing, causing the makeup to miss part of his skin. When he uncreased his brow, Eureka and Shinsu looked over at him and snorted. You really shouldn't have tensed. Now we've missed a bit. Relax again, Izakun, we need to reapply where we missed so it looks like you have real eye bags. Why are we doing this again? He asked as the brush pressed down on his cheek. You wanted to have eye bags as mine. Shinsu joked as Eureka backed off from Izuku. He blinked a few times to cry out any of the eyeshadow that could have gotten into his eye. When he was certain there was nothing in his eyes, he looked at the two. How do I look? He asked, posing dramatically. Honestly? Eureka asked. Honestly? Like shit. Who decided this was a good idea? You. Damn. Shinsu wheezed. Chapter 14, there's nothing like a filler chapter, so filler you can't even make a long title for. Also, sports festival. Izuku. Someone whined as he passed through the same alleyway he always took in to get to the train station. Only one person actively seeked him out nowadays. She was skipping towards him without a knife in hand. I thought I wasn't going to see you on your big day, she moaned. Her space buns were messy than usual. She must have wanted to meet up with him. She would rather be caught dead than look like she had rolled out of a pile of cardboard boxes at 5 am. There are several bars that have me on TV. Couldn't you have cheered me on from there? Izuku asked, looking at her. Nope. She popped the pea with a shit-eating grin on her face. Where's the fun in that when I could come and say hi personally? You wouldn't turn me down, would you? He would. The train could be heard miles away, and if he heard the screeching of the brakes he would book it. Even if it meant she would have a knife at his throat on the way back home. It would be better to die in an alleyway in the middle of the night than in the morning when everyone was sober. People didn't like to help him if they were sober. She pouted at his lack of a reaction. You would say no to me, wouldn't you? I thought we were friends. Friends talk to each other before national events because they need someone to cheer them on. I have other students and a crowd of bystanders to cheer me, and I know you'll be screeching from wherever you are. I know. She whined. They aren't me though, are they? What use is being cheered on if it isn't by the person who gave you all your experience? She threw her hands in the air. It isn't fair. All I want is to see Izakun proving himself live, but no. She dragged out the no as she leaned on him. Instead, I have to go watch him at a bar with some drunks who are more impressed by a pretty girl than you. You wouldn't even know how proud I am when you make everyone bleed. Izuku laughed nervously. The train wasn't due for another 5 minutes at least. She would know this. There was no escape for him. Her face was rising in color as she blabbered on about how many people would look so pretty bloodied up. Her eyes had glassed over. Izuku would have ran if he didn't know better. This wasn't his first encounter with her getting worked up. Her fingers were already tracing the hem of the knife. Can you bleed for me, Izakun? It's no fun if they cut off you being beaten and bloodied. This was how it worked. She wasn't like his other muggers who demanded money or his possessions. There was no way she was desperate and in need of what she demanded. She just got off to her victims bleeding. It was a win-win. Get their permission to stab them or stab them because you didn't get their permission. She laughed as she pulled out the butt-heavy knife and traced it round his neck. It was dragged down just enough to miss cutting his flesh. When she reached his shoulder blade, she pressed down. Izuku sucked in a breath, begging that he didn't scream. It kept cutting through his skin like paper. She was giggling. Izakun, you really are my favorite victim. She teased. No one quite knows how to hold in their screams like you do. It's awfully cute. She pulled the weapon out and helped him slip his sleeve back on. I'll be cheering for you, so do me proud. She cooed as she skipped back down the alleyway and into the streets. Izuku wanted to slip down the wall and cradle his arm, but there was no time for that. His favorite mugger would definitely put herself in a position that would compromise her position there. Others he had become acquainted with over the years would also see his weak form any second now and beat him up. Yeah, he wasn't in the mood for that. Izuku picked himself up and headed to the train station at record speed. His hand pressed down on the top of his arm to stop the blood from pouring out of his shoulder. He would have to bandage it in a bathroom stall when he got into school. The teachers couldn't get a whiff of what happened. The sports festival was his time to prove himself, and he'd be damned if she ruined it for him. It would also likely end with him in hospital over a stab wound to his abdomen. That wasn't his aim. Izuku pulled his hand off his shirt and stared at the blood that had gathered on his hand. There was no place for him to wipe it off. His gray blazer had stained and his sleeves had as well. He went to place his hand back there when Eureka jumped him. "How'd you get that?" she asked, poking the wound, likely unaware of the pain that could cause. He flinched back at the prod. "I ran in with one my friends." She got overexcited about the sports festival. He explained. Eureka bit her lip as she rolled up his sleeve without bothering to explain. "That isn't the same friend who made you 4 hours late for school that one time, is it? Because if Shinsu or Mike Sensei find out, she'll probably go to court. She also doesn't sound like that good of a friend. Have you tried talking to her about consent around these sort of things?" She wouldn't listen. "I'm a weak quirkless target, remember?" He tried to play off. It did the opposite effect. "You can't be friends with someone sees you that way," Eureka stated. "When we get to UA, you are giving us a description of her so we can get her behind bars where she belongs." Izuku waved his hands frantically. "No," he screeched. Eureka raised an eyebrow. He took a deep breath. "Our deals might be the only thing keeping her from murdering someone else. Please, just help me bandage this when we get on the train and I won't strain myself so much. I might drop out if it hurts that much. I have ibuprofen on me though. I'll be fine, it'll be worse if we snitch on her." Heavens knows what she'd do then. Eureka grimaced as she ordered, "If she ever seems like a legitimate threat, you have to tell a teacher." Izuku gulped and nodded. "You can't tell Shinsu either. He'll tell someone. Deal? This is a secret between you and me." They shook on it. Midoriya used his weaker hand to keep the blood from ruining her own hand. They stood by the train tracks in silence. The carriage was taking its sweet time today. Izuku tapped his feet with impatience as he waited for it to turn up. It was another 2 minutes before it did. The brakes squeaked as the train pulled up. Izuku pulled himself through the door and collapsed onto one of the spare seats. Beside him, Eureka did the same. "I have bandages in my bag. Do you mind getting them out for me?" he asked. In response, she pulled the school bag onto her lap and rummaged around. She found his notebooks, a spare blazer which she kept out, and box of plasters. "Oh, I must have left them at home. I thought any injuries caused by Kaken could be cleaned up by recovery girl. The plasters will have to do then. Do you mind sticking it on? My hands kind of..." He trailed off. "Oh. Sure. Take your hand off," she ordered. Eureka peeled off the largest plaster she could find and stuck it over the cut. It started to absorb the blood. "By any chance do you have anything I can wipe my hand on either?" Izuku asked as he pulled his sleeve down. The red liquid had begun to dry. When they got to UA, he could pass it off as a barbecue sauce stain and no one would be wiser. The smell still tingled, but no one had a smelling quirk. Deodorant would also smother the copper if anyone was able to call him out for it. He hated to admit, but the mugger had chosen a good day to pounce on him. "Yeah. I do. Well, I have a tissue which isn't very good with dried blood," Eureka said as she handed it to him. The tissue started to soak up the blood immediately. It had gone from white to red in splotches immediately. He kept pressing it down until nothing else came back. His palm was still red, yet tapping it didn't dirty his fingerprints. Izuku slumped into his seat. That was a terrible way to start the day, and now I have to do a sports day with kids who could kick my ass into tomorrow. Don't say that. You're going to do great. Hatsum May will do better than me and laugh about it. She's a bitch, we've already covered that. Of course she's going to do well. She's probably bribed half the hero students to take her on if they win the first challenge. She's baby obsessed and knows I can fly, which is the only trick I have up my sleeve. All Might is a terrible teacher. Hatsum will do better than everyone because she will win with those jet boots. The same boots she purposefully left turned off, and whatever else she fucking has on her. Eureka's fists were clenched with anger as she yelled more profanities. "Eureka," Izuku said, avoiding eye contact with the girl, "I agreed to team up with her last week because her gadgets and my analysis would help us get past the second round. She isn't that bad." It had been the wrong thing to say. Eureka went bright red as she looked round to meet Izuku dead in the eyes. "You little bitch." Izuku snuck into his homeroom with dripping wet hands. There weren't any comments as he took his place beside Shinsu. "What happened to your blazer?" he asked, pointing to the blood stain that had dried up on the train. "I spilled barbecue sauce down myself when I grabbed a sausage from McDonald's for breakfast," Izuku joked. He prayed to the gods that his friend brought the lie. His face contorted, but he let it go. If you say so. Also, next time have cereal at home instead. It's far nicer than whatever's in those sausages. Izuku chuckled. Yeah. I mean, I reckon it isn't fully pork. Maybe it's beef and they've been lying to us this whole time. Exactly. Think about it. They always say in those silly adverts this burger is 99% beef or something. Never do they mention that the sausage is fully pork. It would be a scandal, but if we call them out now, what would they do? The media would eat this up like savages. Hang on, let me Google this 1 second. We need to fact check our information. That's boring. Hush, I am looking it up. They're made from pork. I got that from the McDonald's website. I think it was British one, but point still stands. It's the McDonald's website. They're lying to you. Shinsu, it's against the law for a company to lie to its consumers. They're big enough to be checked often enough. I assure you right now. They probably are not lying when they say that it is made of pork. The dispute went back and forth. They missed what President Mike said when he walked through the door. There didn't seem like much else they could be told though. A pep talk was useless once the festival actually started and you weren't doing great. The information on what they had to do had been drilled into their brains for the week leading up to it. If somehow Izuku and Shinsu had missed anything of dire importance, their classmates would fill them in. At least they hoped so. Izuku shut the door to the changing room and slung his bag on the peg, claiming that area as his. The boys' changing rooms were not a fun place to be when everyone is excited for proving themselves. Izuku stuck in the corner between the lockers. He prayed to whatever god was up there that no one would peer at him before the blue t-shirt was pulled over his head. It wasn't enjoyable to explain how he had gotten a ton of scars. They ranged from starbursts that scattered his arms to fingerprints around his throat. He liked how thick his hair had grown to be, the edges that curled round him hid the worst of them. Kaken hid the ones left by him purposefully. Bodily harm was okay until he would carry it for the rest of his life. No one was allowed to see them. The cut on Izuku's arm didn't seem like such a big deal. If anyone saw it, they would jump to conclusions that he was still actively harmed. So, he shoved his right arm through the sleeve before anyone could get a glimpse. His blazer lay discarded on the bench. He picked it up and shoved it onto the nearest peg that was taken by his school bag. He was done minutes before anyone else was. He sat on the bench waiting for the announcement to come for 1C to enter the arena. He could hear one being taken out now. Yurika would already be amongst the crowds like an eye candy. Half of the boys were still shoving their clothes on. Shinsu slithered round so he stood in front of Izuku. The green-haired boy looked up and grinned. "Are you ready to win this thing and put your training to use?" he asked. His smile curled round and he looked at his friend in the eyes. Shinsu took on the staring competition with ease. "Not so sure I'll win. All I care about is knocking some sense into a hero student's head. I am their enemy and I am capable of taking them down," he said. Izuku sighed. That's helping them though. The kids already know they aren't unbeatable, and that would have shattered their ego. "USJ, remember? You Hitachi are here to win." He prodded his chest. "You aren't?" he asked. "I'm here to make Hatsum beat Yurika and prove a point before anything else. If that means losing, then so be it," Izuku said. He pulled back and grinned. "Let's hope I don't have to fight Hatsum then, because I can't beat you and she has you by her side." Izuku laughed. "Oh, for the team event make sure you're with us. Otherwise the ones-on-ones you stand a higher chance of being pitted against me." "Noted. Be on your good side and get on your team, then maybe I won't lose to you or Hatsum May the second I enter that arena. That would be a way to go down, wouldn't it? To your babies." Izuku snorted. "Yeah, best not to embarrass yourself that way." The conversation dropped halfway as the door opened and Eraserhead peeked over the door. "Right, general education is about to be called. You should all go and prepare. Remember, if any one of you do well, we might consider moving you into the hero course. There are open spots this time round. Don't make a fool out of yourselves. You are still representing UA." He seemed to be addressing the whole class. Izuku saw how he was staring directly where Shinsu sat beside him. The purplenet also caught wind of how it was towards him. A rare toothy smile came forth instead of the smirks he usually did. The pep talk did its job well. The doors was left dangling open. Everyone left the room. Izuku offered Shinsu his hand and pulled him up. "You ready to go wreck some egos?" he asked. You bet I am. They ran towards the door and pushed it open from where it had been closed on them. The two broke into a jog as they chased after the rest of the year. They caught up in time to exit at the same time. The crowds were as loud as fireworks. Everyone was screaming as the extra kids walked through the door. They weren't borderline deafening them like they did on the television. Several voices must have gone hoarse after 1B came out. Present Mike called the rest of the classes out. Midnight stood on the platform. Midoriya had blinked before it all happened. The 18-plus heroine took to the stage and unplugged the MICR phone. Welcome ladies, gents, and all my NBs out there. She shrieked, causing another applaud from the crowd, to the UA First Year Sports Festival. She let the crowds calm down and clean up their nosebleeds. Once there was silence again, she continued, before we spin our wheel and discover the first challenge they'll be facing, let's have it for our number 1 hero student. Bakugo Katsuki. Kiken twitched as he climbed onto the podium. If he wasn't trying to hide his place in the general education, he might have screamed from joy. Kiken was already on his way to being a hero. Izuku placed a hand over his mouth to smother the squeals when the boy picked up the microphone. All you extras heroes don't even stand a chance. I'm going to win this thing and you all better watch me. He dropped the microphone, letting the drop echo through the halls. Well, Midnight spoke, that was an interesting pep talk. The crowds giggled at her joke. How about we find out what our first years are doing? He asked. The wheel began to spin round and round until she placed her hand down to stop it. Looks like it's an obstacle course. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.